One of the other things that I think is really great is the stuff that you guys do beyond just the games, like the trading cards, the pogs, like the pog thing's kind of new. And like these are like these are like real deal pogs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so I mean,
you've been talking about pogs since I've known you, so this is a dream.
I've always loved pogs. I mean, you know, in 93 or whatever, I was there for that pog zeitgeist, and I remember going in stores and seeing glass display cases with ridiculously priced pogs in them as if some of them were actually rare or whatever. But there was just this like, I liked pogs. I liked the form factor. I liked the collectability of them, and I've always wanted to do them, but I didn't want to have to like call them milk caps or whatever, like some kind of like off-brand, you know, term to skirt around calling them pogs. So I was kind of like resolved to, you know, only do pogs if we could call them pogs. So we finally figured that out this year. We hired a licensing guy, and like the first thing I put him on was like, hey, can you figure out getting us like the license to call them pogs? And he pulled it off. So we were able to introduce pogs this year. But I mean, we've been doing trading cards for a while. When we first did the Silver Case, which was a PC game that we did back in like 2016, I think, at the end of that, we needed to figure out how to manufacture and assemble like a box with like specialized print goods in it. So we met with a bunch of local printers, and we eventually stumbled on this one that did it for us. And it turns out that they used to be Skybox in the 90s. Like, they used to make all the Marvel Masterpieces cards. And I was like, holy shit, like we can't work with these guys that used to make Marvel Masterpieces and not do trading cards. Like we have to do trading cards. So at that point it was like, you know, we made this shift to starting to include trading cards with our games, because I was like such a big fan of Marvel cards back in the 90s. And I was like, you know, I'm not going to miss my opportunity to do that. Like everything we do, it's like a running theme with us. It's always something that ties back to like our own personal interests and goals. Like we're very much driven by just like, what is something cool that we want to do, even if it's really stupid, even if it doesn't seem like it makes sense. Like if it's something that appeals to us, we end up doing it.
No, it's I definitely feel like that like sincere fandom comes across in a lot of like the products that you guys put out, you know. Just looking at what you guys did for like the Castlevania collector's edition, and like what you guys have done with Quake recently, things like that, a ton of other ones, like there seems to be a lot of thought and care put into how you guys are packaging these things, and what like you want to give people something cool that they're actually going to appreciate. It's not just another statue of Nathan Drake or something like that.
Yeah, you know, I'm trying to, one of the benefits we have, since, you know, we're not selling on a traditional retail shelf, is we can do like weird collector's editions that wouldn't necessarily work in a traditional retail capacity. Like, I don't think like anybody on like a regular retail shelf is going to want, you know, the Quake quad damage that spins around on a motorized base or whatever. Like they'd want like Quake Guy or whatever, you know, the Ranger, like they'd want him as a statue. But I was like, you know, it would be cooler to have this like thing that I can just put on my desk that'll just sit there and spin all day. It's like really obtuse and weird, but like it just seems so much more appealing to me. And we have a collector's edition that I was working on yesterday for a game I can't announce yet, but like it's gonna come with a fake mustache, like, you know, just because they like seemed really cool to me when I was thinking about it. It won't make sense when we announce it, but you know, it's a mustache based on one of the characters in the game. You know, it's instead of coming with a replica helmet, it comes with a replica wearable mustache.
Jason, Josh, can you talk about? We talked about this before briefly years ago at a convention, but because you do specifically games, you're able to license a little more stuff, like with your Monkey Island stuff. If that thing was just, you have to bundle it with the game, because if you release it just the physical merch, it's classified as like a toy or something different with different licensing rights. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it can get weird when you're dealing with like big companies like Disney or some of the bigger like media companies and Bethesda. You know, if they have consumer products licensees, sometimes, especially with Star Wars, it's like you can't think of an item that they don't already have a consumer products partner for. Like, name it, there's somebody making a Star Wars thing for it already. So when it comes to doing a CE, it's like there's so many restrictions on what you can and cannot do, because there's somebody for statues, there's someone for action figures, there's someone for paperweights, there's someone for basically everything you could possibly tap into. Yeah. So it's like, you have to kind of get real creative on what you can do. And some of the other struggles are sometimes like lack of assets or whatever, which we ran into with a lot of the big companies just didn't preserve their art in any capacity. And the art's either been thrown away or it's in like private collections, and those private collectors won't share it. So, you can't, like, you have one piece of art that you can work with, or you have something that you saved for, like, you went on the Wayback Machine and went to the game's old website and you found like a 400 by 400 JPEG that, you need to AI upscale and hope to God, like it works or whatever.
But you've had to track down old magazines to get some art.
Yeah.
It's pretty ridiculous.
With Monkey Island, we actually, we created this really awesome book, and I wish I had it in front of me, but, we got these like interviews with so many different influential people who worked on the series throughout the years. And we've got this basically like oral history of the entire franchise that's in this book. And it's like 300, 400 pages. It would absolutely sell like gangbusters if we could sell it outside of the collector's edition. But, if we wanted to do that, we'd have to go through like Walt Disney Books, and we'd have to get like a book license and, pay a minimum guarantee on that. And they'd probably have to publish it. I mean, I don't even know what the process is for it. It's crazy. And it was the same thing, like we couldn't include the Monkey Island soundtrack because that would have to go through the Walt Disney Music Group because they control those rights now. So it's like the bigger companies can get fractured, and then the rights can fall with different groups or different licensees. And then there's like just things you can or can't do, and it can get complicated. But we do our best to try to figure it out. And, sometimes just being able to do some of these cool things within the CE is the only way they're ever going to get to exist. So it's nice to be able to like do what we can to make these things exist.
That's awesome. Like, it sounds like licensing a lot of times is like the biggest hurdle for you guys to get a product to launch.
It is, and I mean, it'll cause problems where like our E3 press conferences that we do every year, those things will be changing up until like an hour before the event because licensees will be, waffling on whether to allow themselves to be included or not. And oftentimes the license things are like our biggest things to announce. Like the year we announced Star Wars was crazy. Nobody ever thought that limited run games would work on Star Wars stuff. Like that was kind of like a nail biter up until the end, because they didn't really have any trailers for these older games. So I had to edit it, and I wasn't sure if they were going to let me use the music or anything like that. So, I mean, that was just another moment where it was really surreal, where it's like, I was sitting at my computer editing a Star Wars trailer, basically. Like, did I ever think I would have the opportunity to do that? Like, sure, it's a trailer of games or whatever, but at the end of the day, I'm still editing like a Star Wars trailer. Like, what? How did that happen?
Yeah, what you guys did with those Star Wars games was great too, in those blister packs, like the old figures.
Yeah, that was one of those things where, we had all these restrictions, and it was like, with all of these restrictions, how am I going to do something like neat and unique? And it came down to like, what's nostalgic about Star Wars to me the most? And to me, it was the action figure packaging. It was like, you can put any Star Wars item on action figure packaging that throws back to my childhood, and I'm going to buy it. Like, it could be toothpaste, it could be a toothbrush. If it looks like a Star Wars action figure, I'm probably going to buy it. Like, I'm just a sucker for that. So
I'm also kind of curious, now you got your 6-year anniversary coming up. What are your big plans for year 6 here?
We tend to announce our games like very close to when we actually put them on sale. So I don't think we've actually revealed much of our 22 lineup. We did announce at E3 that we've got the Contra Anniversary Collection coming out, which is really cool for me as a lifelong Konami fan. Like, getting to do Castlevania was cool, but I've always been more of a Contra guy. Like, there's just something about Contra that always appealed to me, because I liked, Rambo, I liked, 90s action movies. So Contra was always kind of my main Konami thing. So getting to work on that has been awesome, and I would say that's kind of our biggest 22 thing that's been announced. But we have like tons of other stuff for 2022 that's going to be incredible, and I think some of it's just stuff people aren't going to expect. We have something big that's AAA that I don't think a lot of people would expect to come from us. That is really exciting for all of us.
That's awesome. And you guys also work pretty closely with Way Forward, right? Like, you River City Girls 2.
Yeah, River City Girls 2, River City Girls 0. So we actually, we've announced those as well. And River City Girls Zero is really exciting for us because it's our second release that will utilize our Carbon engine, which is something we've been developing internally to bring back a lot of old games to modern platforms. So that's going to be a really exciting one for us because it's, we're bringing over a Kunio-kun game that was kind of stuck in Japan, had never come over. And it was the first appearance of Kyoko and Masako, the main characters from River City Girls. So when we started working on Carbon and we did Shantae for Way Forward, we were like, what can we do next? And it was like, how about this Kunio-kun game that never came here? And we can kind of, wrap it around with the River City Girls lore and aesthetic. And a lot of people have been kind of questioning, why is it River City Girls? Why isn't it Kunio-kun? And it's like, it'll make sense when it comes out. The way that it's wrapped and packaged up is just so Way Forward. Like it's so creative and it's so clever. It's really gonna hit people. I think they're gonna really like it, and that kind of complaint's gonna dissipate pretty fast.
Awesome. Yeah. You mentioned your Carbon engine. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
So our big thing with Carbon is just we work with a lot of places like Konami where they've got like thousands of titles in their back catalog that just like, they might not justify the budget it would take to do a release with like a major studio like a Digital Eclipse or an M2, like, these known porting houses that do amazing, modern ports. And it's kind of a shame because it's like those games aren't bad. They're still very good and they still deserve modern re-releases, but like they might not justify a $300,000 plus budget to bring them back like a Castlevania or a Contra would. So our kind of core idea was to make this engine in-house that would be like a good solution, accurate emulation, accurate everything, like, but easy to develop so that we could sign some of these games that have, that may not have the notoriety of a big AAA Castlevania franchise or whatever, but, could justify these re-releases and do it on a smaller budget, and not even have to be paid because we could recoup whatever we put into it on a physical release. So the whole core concept is basically making it free, essentially, for our partners to bring these games to modern platforms because we'll do all the work. They don't have to pay us to do the work. And then we recoup on our physical release, but it still comes out digitally and physically. So more people can enjoy these games on modern platforms, both physically and digitally. And it's kind of, I would say that this is, far more accurately preservation than some of the other stuff we're doing, because we are bringing back these games from older formats to modern hardware so people can access them legally again to play. Because that's the big problem right now that a lot of people are pointing out with games. It's like in the film industry, the movie companies always bring back all their movies. They're constantly available to some degree. But in games, there's thousands of games trapped on every generation of hardware. And those games have not been re-released for whatever reason. And Carbon is going to hopefully break down the barrier of re-entry into the market for a lot of these games. That's our overall goal.
Like we talked about, like how you make all, like, you'll have like the quad damage, like turning thing for like the Quake thing, like stuff that you guys are coming up with internally. Like, do you sit down and like figure stuff out? Do people come to you with ideas? Like, what's the process for like creating a collector's edition for limited run games?
It kind of varies project to project. What we prefer to do is we always like to ask our partners and developers, like, hey, what's a wish list of things you've always wanted to do and see? And kind of depending on what they pick, we tell them the feasibility of each item. And then if they're like, well, if there's someone with a bigger license like your Disney or Bethesda's, we usually tell them like our ideas because, they have a lot of stuff going on already. And it's kind of like a round table thing. Like Josh will come up with ideas. I'll come up with ideas. Shaddy will. Sometimes on a lot of our projects, we'll even make like a Google Doc internally and try to get like every employee's idea of like what we want to do. So that way we can try to think outside the box and not try to do the same thing each time. The biggest issues right now that we're seeing, though, is some of the cooler ideas we want to pull off. It's just hard to do with, the pandemic is still affecting like ship times and the cost of things. So we're trying to do everything we can to come up with cool, unique items that aren't going to impact our shipping too much.
Yeah, can we talk a little about that? Like how, as like the shipment, cargo containers, all that stuff, how has that affected your manufacturing and distribution chain?
It's been awful. It's just it's been the worst because on the consumer side, I don't think a lot of people like are seeing the news about this. Like, I know it's getting more widespread now, but you know, every time we have to delay a product, we get roasted, and it just doesn't feel like people are seeing what's going on, where there's like 50 or 60 ships caught off the coast of California waiting to be unloaded. You know, like we're trying to get our Scott Pilgrim CE has been done. Like they completely made this thing overseas, and it's been sitting in a warehouse for 5 months because we need shipping crates to get it over here. It's a hell of a time getting one shipping crate right now. Haven't been able to get that access to shipping crates that we need. Like, they're all, apparently, if people aren't familiar with it, the problem was early in the pandemic, there was so much consumer demand for products from China that boats would come over and not wait to get the empty shipping crates put back on them. They would just come over, get unloaded, go back to China. And it created this problem. All the shipping crates are over in the US now, and there's very few left in China. So basically, like, shipping crates are 4 times the cost that they used to be to get. And it's not just that, it's the availability of them. And the cost isn't like set in stone. They actually put them up for auction, essentially. And, you know, if car companies are outbidding us on shipping crates, we can't get them because we're being outbid, and we're trying our hardest to get them. But it's like,
we don't make enough cars.
And then it's like, you can't predict, like, once something gets on a boat, you have no idea when it's going to get to you, because there's no timeline. There's nobody that says like, hey, your boat's 98th in line to be unloaded. It's just like complete chaos at the ports. So it's like, it's nuts. And it's affecting so many random things too. It's like, you know, like blue paint is hard to get now for some reason. It's just like all these random things are becoming hard to get and expensive and weird. And it's like coming out of nowhere. It's just, it's such a weird time to be manufacturing physical goods.
Yeah, I just ordered an in-stock thing from someone on another website, and it has to ship from China, and it's told me last week it'll be here maybe late January.
Wow.
And like that was the thing that's already made and ready to go, and it's just like they have no idea when it's going to be able to even get on a ship.
Even your Monkey Island anthology is still in production, I believe. Like, it just,
yeah. So
yeah,
we actually managed that. So that was another one where it had been completed before Scott Pilgrim. That one only needed, I think, 2 shipping crates to get over, and we actually managed to get that booked. It was an earlier product than Scott Pilgrim, so we made a concerted effort to make sure, you know, that was prioritized versus, you know, using those 2 as 2 of the 18 that we needed for Scott Pilgrim. Really, we got to get Monkey Island out. So thankfully that's actually on a shipping boat now, but it's in that, you know, when's it gonna come off the boat? Who knows? I want to know. The good thing of this with Monkey Island, at least, was it took Ron a lot longer to sign the certificate of authenticities than was expected. Like, he kind of thought when we initially asked him about the idea, he was like thinking maybe he'd have to sign 1,000, and then we sold, I think, 11,000 total Monkey Island CEs, and you know, he just did not expect that. So it was like,
cramp your hand up.
Yeah, when these 11,000 sheets came over, he was like, oh my God, like, this is going to take me a very long time to sign. But he pulled it off. It took a few months, but, you know, it aligned well because those arrived at our office maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And, you know, with the anthology boxes on the boat finally, we are, I think, on track to finally have like an end in sight for it. And it turned out really nice. Like, people are going to be super happy when they get these, because and it's mainly, I think it's going to come down to that book. That book is so absurdly beyond, I think, what anybody is expecting. So I'm excited for it to finally get in people's hands.
That is the one nice thing about the quality that we try to put behind our stuff. Even though the weight's really bad, it usually, I would say, we try to make it worth it for everyone, so that when they finally get it, they're not like, oh, they made a really bad product.
I wish I had the Scott Pilgrim KO edition sitting right behind me so I could show you, but it's in, you know, a full metal and wooden instrument box. You know, it's like an authentic roadie case. And when you open it, like, the heft and the weight on it is just amazing. And when you open it up, there's this pop-up stage that plays Anamanaguchi's music, and the lights are synced to it. Like,
so good.
It's really cool, and people are going to be super excited when they get it. It's just like the wait is so frustrating because we can't provide like accurate ship dates because of how the world is right now. Like, we just have no idea. It's nuts.
Yeah, no, I'm patiently waiting for mine.
It'll be worth
Don't worry,
it. It's so good.
Take your time, guys. Just do your thing. It's fine. I got plenty of other games piling up that I need to play in the meantime. I'm kind of curious, do you have a message for your fans? And then also, I know you guys care a lot about preservation, like beyond just purchasing limited run games. Like, do you have any like words of encouragement for other people out there trying to preserve this like history of games?
Oh, I mean, for the fans, like I can't stress this enough. Like, we truly appreciate them. We're glad a lot of our fans are being patient with us, and like we wouldn't be here without them. And that's not a thing that's like strange to us at all. Like, we don't pretend that's not the case, and we try to go out of our way to like help people whenever we can. And I don't know, like none of this would be possible without them. It's been really amazing. Like, we did I know this is a side note, but we did a little pop-up shop thing recently, like a flea market type event in the summer. You know, social distance and all that, and we had protection there, but the positive feedback we got about the event was just awesome, and having people come up and tell you like, you know, thank you for doing what you do, and like, you know, here I'm so happy to have all these games, and you know, just like the bond with our customers was nice. And like, I can't wait for us to have our retail shop open next year and like to hang out and talk to customers.
Yeah, it's just, you know, echo what Douglas said, you know, really appreciative of our fans. We couldn't be where we are if there wasn't people supporting our releases and buying things and, you know, sticking with us throughout the years. You know, we literally wouldn't be here without the people who are buying from us. You know, that's what got us here, and it's helped so many developers continue creating games. It's helped so many people out that, you know, I can't even stress that. There are a lot of developers who, if they didn't do a physical release with us, and if nobody had shown up to buy that physical release, that those developers would be out of business right now. And, you know, I'd be one of them. But so many of our partners would have been in that same boat. So really appreciative to all of our fans who have kind of kept us afloat and kept those developers afloat. When it comes to game preservation, support initiatives like the VGHF, you know, they're preserving a lot of, you know, random context around games. Like, they're preserving game magazines, game art, game artifacts, prototypes, things like that. And it's very important that there's someone somewhere doing that, because our game industry doesn't really have a centralized source of preservation. Like, there are a lot of museums out there, but a lot of them are more just like glorified collections. That's not all of them, but there are some where it's like, you know, collectors have kind of started them as a way to expand their collections, you know, like and it's not necessarily going to be accessible by scholars or academics. So, you know, support places like the Maid, the Strong Museum, VGHF, where they're kind of letting people access the materials and access those things, because it's going to be very important as we get further into the future to have a lot of this stuff preserved and accessible for people.
Awesome. Well, Douglas, Josh, I want to thank you both for being here today. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. Happy anniversary. Congratulations on making it here and not needing to declare bankruptcy on an $85,000 loan. Where can folks find out more about limited run games?
You go ahead, Douglas.
They can go to limitedrungames.com and sign up for our mailing list. They can go to our Twitter at limitedrungames, same for Instagram and Facebook. They can follow Josh and I at our handles at limitedrundoug, at limitedrunjosh. Pretty much everywhere. Like, I think technically we even have a Tumblr account, but that doesn't get updated, so don't go there.
Don't go to our Tumblr account.
And if you want us to make a Pinterest, let us know. I wouldn't be surprised if that had already been made at some point.
We already have a Pinterest. Yeah, we have a Pinterest.
Oh, there it is.
But we don't use it. Nobody's making pins.
You got a Vine coming in 2024.
We had a Vine.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And we would post 6-second unboxings where we would just violently open games.
It got ridiculous.
It was really good. I liked our Vine a lot. I hate that we had to shut down our Vine. That was like, it was great.
Violently is the only way to open games, I think. Well, once again, guys, thanks for being here today. Everyone go check out Limited Run Games, especially if you have interest in the collector's market and preservation of video games. Until then, we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.